Hello, everybody. Welcome to the live developer update. It's Jesse. Ian's here.
Great to be here with you guys, and really excited to talk about Legion.
Yeah, I am thrilled to hear what you have to say. I think everyone out there is as well. This is not rehearsed. There is zero rehearsal right now.
Pretty much, we're just sitting down for an hour to chat, and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I'm thrilled. So, okay, at the top, announcements, thoughts, anything like that. Hit us. What do you got?
So, I mean, it's great kind of coming out of our collective shells to talk to the community. We've really been super laser focused on Legion, on the alpha, and how that's really been going in the months since BlizzCon, which was the last time we really had a chance to speak to the community at large. We're really happy with how the alpha has played out, has unfolded. People may remember, in fact, I'm confident do remember, since I've been reminded on a regular basis. One of the last times I talked to you guys at BlizzCon, I said, beta's going to start in like just a couple of weeks. Well,
you liar.
I'm a liar. I'm sorry.
Wow.
At the time, we planned to start what we were going to call our beta in late November. And so that was the original plan. But then we took a step back and started thinking about what does beta mean? What are kind of the expectations? These days in the industry, for a lot of people, for a lot of games, a beta is kind of like a polished demo of almost the final product. And what we were going to be rolling out was kind of a very traditional, old school WoW beta, but more than 2/3 of specs weren't playable. There was a huge chunk of content and features that just weren't implemented, and it didn't feel right calling it a beta. So we called it an alpha. We've still invited a good chunk of people. It was the kind of thing where we were going to opt-in lists.
Yeah, I was there. I can attest. It wasn't done. Like for everyone who's like, I just wanted to be in. You really you didn't.
It was pretty rough. But no, I mean, we did invite a bunch of people. It wasn't just 100 streamers, though. No, actually,
it was. They just sent me 100 codes, and I never sent them out. It was awkward, guys.
So he's to blame. But no, so I mean, we've been sending out invite waves over the course of the past few months, but really, we progressively and periodically been unlocking new specs, finally getting to the point where all 36 new specs are playable, all the artifacts can be acquired, all the zones, all the dungeons can be visited. Legion certainly isn't finished. We are polishing it, we are tuning it, we are refining it, we're listening to feedback, and kind of in that last stretch where we're making the game sort of the polished thing that the players deserve, but all the big pieces are there. So at this point, we are ready and prepared to move on to a formal beta stage, and so that's kind of where we're at.
Is that an announcement?
It's a little bit of an announcement. So yeah, so our current plan, people on the alpha may have noticed that, we put a build up, and then we took it back down, we put a new build up. We've just been trying to get that stable final build. We currently think we have it. So our current plan is we're going to take the alpha down over the course of the next day, and we're going to send out a big beta invite wave. And at 2 p.m. Pacific this Thursday, so 5 p.m. Eastern, 11 p.m. at night, Central European time, ungodly early in the morning in Australia. Sorry, guys.
Sorry.
At 2 p.m. Pacific on Thursday, the plan is to open the gates to that large new beta pool. We will wipe characters. We will have anyone who's been playing in the alpha. Sorry, you're going to be logging in starting from scratch.
Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, part of the point is to test, both to stress test the initial, everybody's hammering the Broken Shore, everybody's doing that stuff simultaneously. Our server team's going to get a lot of great data out of that. But also, now that the experience is actually put together end-to-end the way we intended to be played, we want to get the feedback from that experience and what it's going to be like, as opposed to people just kind of logging in the middle of Dalaran, starting at different points along the way. And I mean, our hope and our plan is for this to be the only character wipe that we do. Obviously, if there's some horrible data corruption thing or something necessitates it, we might have to do it again. But the plan is, let's just do this once and get really solid feedback from leveling up and playing the game the way it was meant to be played.
Great. I know I'm excited. And I think I speak for everyone. Finally, I have that power.
It's been a while. But yeah. We're super excited to get more people in and to hear what you guys have to say. We're really proud of what we've done so far and could use your help, could use your feedback, making it even better in the months to come.
Great. That's huge. That's really big at the top. So I'm sure we'll remind you throughout this, hey, it's coming soon. So
yep.
Unless this is one of those famous Ian lies.
Okay, so Now, Ian the lawyer is going to come out and throw out all the caveats and walk it all back. I mean, it's possible we could find a fatal problem with our build tonight that could push this back. But as far as we know, we think this build is good to go. So it should be 2 p.m. Pacific on Thursday until it's not.
Yeah.
But it should be.
Okay, great. So let's continue on then, because that's huge, and I know I'm excited. I won't be able to play it because I'll be out of the country, but man, would I love to. So from there, let's actually talk about Legion and get into that and all the things that people can expect when they actually get into the beta and things like that. So where do we even start?
So where you will start in the beta is depending on your faction. So some of this is going to be an experience that some players can play. If you're playing actively during the weeks before, August 30th, you'll be able to do the intro sequence leading into the Broken Shore itself and the major faction-specific events associated with that. But for someone who just logs in, a month or two into Legion, you would do all of that back to back. And that's the experience people are going to have in the beta. So if you're Alliance, you'll be starting in Stormwind. If you're Horde, you'll be starting in Orgrimmar, where you are, initially sent by your faction leader answering the command of the Alliance or the Horde to rally and travel to the Broken Shore, where we need to make our last stand against the Legion. So you play through the Broken Shore experience. There are fateful and tragic events that happen there. Regroup back at your capital cities, then head off to Dalaran. And there you will go to the Broken Shore, and things begin. For people who are in the alpha, that's kind of where we picked up initially in the alpha experience. So the first thing you do when you arrive in Broken Isles in Dalaran is seek out your artifact, found your class order. Those two things happen in different orders or often intertwined depending on what class or spec you're playing. And that's kind of your whole introductory experience. And then it's off to do zones, do dungeons, whatever you want to do.
Cool. All right, and let's talk class orders then. So Garrison 2.0 kind of deal? Like, what is...
Not really, honestly.
Okay.
So there are a lot of really fundamental differences. I think the Garrison was a personal, private space that was about, building up a base, raising an army. That was the fantasy that we were trying to sell in Warlords, that, you kind of were coming to this desolate planet on your own and building a force that could take on the Iron Horde. The Class Order Hall is a shared social space. It's more of a class clubhouse. It's a place where all paladins are going to hang out, if you're Beneath Light's Hope, or all mages are going to hang out in Dalaran. And you'll be seeing other members of your class of both factions. So it's not, this sort of private, isolated space. And there's a very different sort of customization, sort of interaction. Here you are, one of the leaders, one of the paragons of your class, and you are sort of customizing and helping guide, the order. Like basically through a research tree, you can unlock different abilities, different perks to sort of shape the direction you want your order to follow. But really, the order exists as an outlet and to serve the other core world content in Legion, whereas in many ways we viewed the Garrison as like a central standalone feature in and of itself. And that's a very fundamental difference. I think everything about the Order Hall and the class order in Legion is about things in the world that lead you back into it and things in the order that lead you back out into the world.
So it's going to, most of the stuff you're going to do in your Order Hall is going to be like, hey, there's a thing over here you need to go handle. So we're going to go leave the hall to go do that and then come back, more stuff to do.
I think in practice, while leveling up, the most common reason you're going to visit your class order hall is probably going to be to upgrade your artifact. So the forge where your artifact can be imbued and upgraded and customized is in your order hall. So as you're out in the world gaining artifact power, your bar fills up, you have enough power to afford your next trait. You're going to go back to your order hall, make that choice, head back out. In the course of doing so, you'll occasionally see quests pop up. There are, custom class-by-class campaign quests that have a sort of personalized storyline that is, your class's purpose in the world as you gather great champions to aid your cause. And then, yes, there's an extension of the mission system from Garrisons, but it's a much, much smaller, pared-down version. Whereas in Garrisons and Warlords, you had dozens and dozens of followers that you could collect. Here, you have a handful of fixed champions that you can choose to send out on missions less frequently, with generally greater impact. But it's really, a much smaller piece of the overall experience. I know there are people who are kind of scarred by the mission table, like they feel like they've been logging in and looking at this interface and feeling like it was overwhelming a lot of the other features.
No, it was great.
Warlords.
It was fine.
I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry. But no, this is not going to be that. There are pieces of it that we wanted to carry forward. I think it's a way of selling the idea that you are the leader of these champions. But one of the biggest problems with the mission system in Warlords was really that it competed with other content. It's it became a way to easily get almost anything you wanted to get, whether it was crafting stuff, whether it was just raw items, whether it was various currencies, whether it was gold. And when faced with the choice of, well, I could go out and play the game for 30 minutes, or I could run dungeons, or I could just push this button and log off and get the same reward, pushing the button is a really compelling, easy alternative.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's just not what missions are going to be in Legion. I think the loot giving missions, the closest things, there are dungeon missions, there are raid missions, but what they give you is actually like you're sending your champions out to scout, and they will come back with a quest starter that sends you into the dungeon or sends you into the raid to defeat a target to get that loot reward. But that's a very, very different experience than just like I pushed the button, sent my guy off, and got loot. It's a much more optional system ultimately. In general, you're going to be getting order resources by doing quests out in the world. Early on, the primary thing you're going to spend your order resources on is actually upgrading and customizing your class order tech tree. But then any surplus resources you have, the missions are kind of an outlet for those. It's a thing that you can do with them.
Great. So speaking of order halls, when like a character comes into the order hall and starts messing with sound, is there an option to I don't know where we're going with this. It was weird that happened. All right, so speaking of the order halls, I know a lot of people were very curious about how customizable these are going to be, because if it's yours, like because you're the leader, but it's also a shared space, what can you change? Because I know one of the things people actually really, really liked about their garrisons was that I can change everything from music to what the guards are wearing to who the guards are to all that stuff to the way it looks.
And I think that that's one of the fundamental differences. It's not super customizable. I think the customization is in terms of the gameplay, in terms of how you want to customize the research tree, and then your artifact is intensely customizable, both in terms of its powers and its visual appearance. But the Order Hall itself, I think these are established places in the world. It's the home of the Silver Hand beneath Light's Hope Chapel. It's Odin's Valor Jar up in Skywall, and Skyhold. And these are places that existed sort of before you came along. They're not yours to decorate, right? You wouldn't just walk into someone else's house and start changing the furniture and rearranging the couches. That would just be rude. So it serves a different purpose, but is there, I think, ultimately to serve as this collective class clubhouse and really reinforce the idea of class identity that I think is central to Legion, both in terms of the storyline, but also in terms of a lot of the animation, visual improvements that we've done to really make classes feel more distinct from each other.
All right, so it's all part of the things you guys talked about at BlizzCon that was sort of like this. We want to have your class fulfill the fantasy of what that class is, and so as the leader of said class, like you're put in charge of this, but you're there because everyone else is like, we want you to be here, but not because you're like, I'm gonna take this thing over and I'm gonna run this. And
pretty much. I mean, I think it's more of it's King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table, right? It's more you are part of a fellowship of other great paladins if you're a paladin, or this secret society of rogues operating within Dalaran if you're a rogue. And you are a hero, you are a champion, but you're also part of a group of great peers. If you're a druid, you're working alongside people like Malfurion, and all of this is to save Azeroth. But you're not necessarily, just going in and taking over and micromanaging everything.
All right. So when it comes to the quest that you leave your order hall for, and you go off to get like the arm of Morgoth the Flayer, great name, use it. You go off to get his arm. Is that all randomized, like everyday random, or is it going to be that there are certain days where certain things happen, and if you don't do it that day, then it slowly becomes like randomized, or is it one of those? Because I'm just curious if there's a million paladin who all need to do the exact same thing, what that ends up looking like, how crazy that becomes.
Well, so I think there's a couple of different quest systems that we have in Legion. Each campaign, each order has a sort of fixed one-time epic story arc that you will play through with multiple chapters that unfolds over the course of leveling. And that's something that you will unlock at your own personal pace. So probably not every single paladin in the world is hitting a given step at a given time. And that's, about whether it's tracking down a conspiracy and maybe a traitor that's within your own ranks if you're a mage, or
Jaina.
I didn't mention any names. Let's not go there. You never know. But no, or
Is it Dreadlord?
or if you're look, we said not to talk about that.
Look, I'm here. I'm on the campus. There are notes everywhere, guys. Everywhere.
Look, just because she conveniently fled Dalaran and went into hiding the moment demon hunters were free doesn't mean anything.
The pieces are coming together.
Doesn't mean anything. But anyway, Death Knights. If you're a Death Knight, you are trying to basically raise a new set of 4 horsemen to rival Kel'Thuzad to help you fight the Legion. It's things along those lines that are the meat of this quest arc. And so yes, that's fixed, but it's also sort of epic class-specific content. So if you've leveled initially as a mage, then you're playing a different class, you're going to have a very different story to experience. Then complementing that at max level, we have a world quest system that is much more randomized. But that is at a given time a fixed state for everyone in your entire region, and those are, I think the way we think of them internally, sort of the genesis for the idea was kind of garrison missions for players. It's what if instead of logging in and seeing this list of missions to send your followers on, you logged in and opened up the map, and there was this whole array of things for you to go do. Do you want to go and complete this objective for gold, or that one for artifact power, or this one for gear, or this rare one for a rare pet that's up? And those are things that they're not daily quests. They come and go on different cycles. Some might be around for only a few hours. Some might be around for several days if it's a rarer, weightier objective. But the idea is, every time you log in, you can bring up the map and see what there is to do, and it's never going to be quite the same thing twice.
Well, what about the flip side then? So if you're a person who didn't have a lot of time to log in and probably is looking at this and like, all right, well, there's no way I can do all of these every day. Like go off and I liked the idea of just pressing a button and sending other people to do it. If you're that person, what can you look forward to out of this system?
So, I think as with everything, we always want to strike a balance between giving the person who wants to log in and wants to spend a lot of time in the game things that they can do with their time, but also not creating so much pressure that someone who has a more limited schedule feels like they can't keep up, or they're just overwhelmed by what they need to do. So I think with world quests, there's 2 pieces to it. First off, like I mentioned, I think the weightier, more rewarding quests are going to be around for a few days. If there's something super rare, it gives you an awesome item drop or a chance at a mount or something, that's not going to just come and go in a 4-hour window and oops, sorry, you were at work, you missed it. Right. The ones that are, that have the 4-hour type of cycle are really just, hey, this is for some gold, or it's for, some artifact power. And those are largely, replaceable. But the bigger structure is every day when you log in, there's going to be an emissary that is asking you to do specific sets of world quests to aid their faction. So all of the world quests in the zone of Val'Sharah, for example, are associated with the Dreamweaver's faction. And so if you have a Dreamweaver emissary cover quest for the day, that's going to ask you to go out and do any 4 world quests in Val'Sharah, and that will give you a very, there you get a reward chest and some reputation for doing so. That's kind of your like big jackpot prize. If you're keeping up with those, then you're kind of being pretty efficient in the system overall. And those, they work kind of like Hearthstone or Heroes dailies in the sense that they can pile up, so you can have at least 3 days worth of them. Great. So if you can't log in for a couple of days, no worries. You'll have them there waiting for you next time you're in, and you can catch up on the ones that you missed.
That's a great answer because it works in all the other games, so it should work here. Okay, let's move on from our order halls. What other major things should we be talking about? What do you think?
I can't think of any weighty topics. I mean, my mind's just, I'm drawing a blank.
Yeah, the internet's been pretty happy so far.
Yeah,
no complaints.
Warcraft positivity, it's everywhere.
It's through the roof right now. Yeah, I don't. There was something I heard about it on like a forum or something. Something about legacy. I don't know what they're talking about. Is that a big thing?
A little bit, a little bit.
Go on.
Yes. No. So I mean, so I think, yeah. Obviously, that was a very heated and passionate topic of discussion, in the past weeks, and heard a lot of great feedback from our fans. I think the overall statement that Jay Allen Brack made and posted on the forums, I think, still stands as our position. I know we've talked about, and some of the people behind the servers in question have talked about, upcoming meetings. That's not something that we as developers on the Warcraft team are necessarily directly involved with. I think our focus right now is Legion in particular, and just working to make that as good as it can be. But I completely understand a lot of the broader picture, nostalgia. I mean, I'm a day one World of Warcraft player myself. Like Thanksgiving 2004, coming home, my server being down all day, being upset, going to a different server. And I've been with the game really since beta from day one, and I remember those times. There were a lot of great times. It's been interesting to see a lot of the response to the pristine servers idea that was floated, sort of pros and cons. And I think one of the big cons that came out of it, one of the big arguments against it, which is completely valid, is like, well, what's the point of having this closed off realm without looking for group, without group finder, without CRZ, if I'm just going to log in, level up to max level in a few days, and then be back to sitting in my garrison? And that's a very good point. And I think it sheds some light on something that I think is just a problem with the game in general right now that I think we can address outside of the context of legacy servers or pristine servers. I think it's just something that can be made better about World of Warcraft, period. And that's just our level up experience through classic zones at low levels. It's pretty broken right now, frankly. It's not really very well tuned, and that's
as in too easy.
It's way too easy, and it's not. It's not even about difficulty. It's about pacing. It's something that, frankly, we've neglected a little bit over the years, and there's been a lot of sort of trickle down effects from balance changes made to the max level game, where we things that used to be talents we now bake in as passives. We buff abilities. We move things that used to be high level abilities down to make them available at level 10. And the end result is, like, if you run around, you're basically like, even without heirlooms. Heirlooms are a whole other level of degeneracy. But if you're doing a level 3 quest right now on a new character, make a hunter, make a night elf hunter, go run around Teldrassil. You basically are 1- and 2-shotting things. You're killing things before they can even engage with you. And the amount of time that you're spending fighting versus the amount of time you're spending running around to your next objective is completely out of whack. There's a lot of other areas like that where it's the pacing of the game just isn't what it should be, and we need to spend more time fixing that up. I think it's actually something we've been looking at, even starting to do via hotfix right now, but want to keep doing going forward. And again, the point isn't to make the game brutally hard. And the reality is, I think vanilla combat times are actually probably a little bit too long in a lot of ways at low levels. We aim for like a 12 to 15 second combat time against a single enemy, and that makes sense at max levels, and that's kind of what we still stick to at max level. But at level 1 or level 5, when you literally just have one button, it's not particularly satisfying gameplay. But combat times of 3 seconds aren't good either. There's a happy medium for us to find and for us to move towards.
So I think it really comes down to that idea that everything about the starting experience was changed in Cataclysm, and then it became very heavily story driven, and each zone led to another, and it was all this overarching story, and it was pushing you along very quickly. Like, instead of you're gonna farm boar for half a day and do some crazy stuff, it was, we're gonna keep you moving like this. And I think maybe a lot of people see that as like, well, that's not the experience I want to remember.
Totally, and it's not the experience that the game was, years and years ago, and it's the outgrowth of us trying to solve a problem that we think has now been solved in different ways, and that's ultimately just barriers to entry for a new player that wants to play with their friends or a returning player. And we were realizing increasingly around the time of Cataclysm, around the time of Mist of Pandaria. Let's say you had a friend who played World of Warcraft who'd been telling you about how awesome it was, and you finally wanted to give it a shot. And, well, they were a max level established level 85 player, and you were looking at this incredibly daunting, series of things to go through before you could actually play with your friend who'd recommended the game to you. Or if you saw a commercial for the new expansion, it looked cool. Well, what do you have to do to get into it? And over time, with every new expansion that came out, and this is a process that started really as early as Burning Crusade, continued on through Wrath, through Cataclysm, we made leveling through the prior expansions a bit faster and a bit faster and a bit faster because we didn't want leveling to be such a barrier to entry.
Yeah, and the inclusion of just like, hey, now you're 90, or
Exactly.
hey, now
Well,
you're 100.
And honestly, the boost solves that problem. If you want to play Warlords of Draenor, you want to play Legion, you buy Legion, you can play Legion. So there isn't this need for us to try to rush people through the level of experience anymore. If you're leveling a character from 1 to 100, we should make that a satisfying, well-paced experience. Again, the goal isn't to go back to it takes 13 days played and hundreds of hours of you're spending a week in Stranglethorn Vale, but you shouldn't be out leveling zones before you can finish their story. You shouldn't be doing one dungeon and finding that the zone that you were in is no longer relevant to you at all. And so that's something that we're going to continue to talk about in the future. I think there's definitely also potential promise. We need to see how it plays out in Legion, but there's some promise for the flexible zone scaling tech that we're using in Legion and how that could be applied to other parts of the world to, again, solve the pacing problem and let people potentially, imagine if a zone like Hillsbrad or Silverpine had a broader level range that it could apply to. You could level through that zone at your own pace without running out of story or getting ahead of where you were supposed to be in the plot.
Cool.
So it's something that we haven't paid enough attention to recently, and that we need to pay more attention to. And that's, as I said, from a company-wide perspective, the discussion of legacy servers, pristine servers, what we want to do with that's sort of above my pay grade. That's kind of a different organizational level. But as the Warcraft development team focused on the live game of World of Warcraft, it definitely has shown a light on some deficiencies in areas where the game has been lacking recently, and that's something we want to do something about.
Great. Right. So this is one of those, like, if you came for an answer from this man, he doesn't have the pay grade for it, but he's doing his best to get some awesome stuff in the game that's going to make everybody happy, or at least try to. It sounds like it.
Yes. Ultimately, we want the game to be something that we as developers are proud of at every level, not just level 100, not just level 110, but also level 27. It should be a fun, epic experience at level 27, and it isn't always right now.
Cool. There you go. All right. Let's move on to some things here that I guess some of the things that we can expect in Legion, things that everything from demon hunters to artifacts to mythic plus.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know where to start here. I know a lot of people want answers, so I guess let's start with what I started with, demon hunter. Besides triple jump, what kind of cool
triple jump? A double jump's not good enough for you all of a sudden?
No. I need to be able then to fly and coast.
All right. Well, okay. Well, you can do.
Good.
If you count glide as a jump, then we got it.
I definitely do.
Okay.
There's a jump, and then like a pop, and then you float. That's a triple.
Yep.
Demon hunters they deserve 3. They've had a rough time.
And really, like, ultimately, just with the topography of Broken Isles, like, you can just go up to High Mountain, just jump a couple times, and you can probably glide all the way to Azuna from there. So enjoy.
If only I didn't only have one character, I would definitely do that.
Well, you got to at least make a demon hunter. They start.
I played that starting experience. I imagine it'll be even better. Okay. It'll be even better on launch, but it's just like I troll shaman since the beginning. I can't. I was resto when there was nothing else you could be. I'd leveled that way. It was a dark time for all of us way back when. As we talk about legacy, remember that.
Yeah. So okay, I actually my first character was also shaman, and I foolishly I picked shaman because I wanted to tank. That was my introduction to World of Warcraft. So I wanted I wanted to be a hybrid tank, and so I looked at paladin. And it was like, okay, cool. That's, they're a really awesome class. They can heal. They can tank.
What's the horde equivalent?
Exactly. Yeah. But my friends were going horde, and so I couldn't be a paladin in 2004.
Smart friends, though.
And so
smart friends.
I was looking through, the talents, and it was like, well, shaman. They can equip a shield. They have this ability called Rockbiter Weapon that says it generates extra threat. They have this ability called Earth Shock that generates extra threat. They have some talents like toughness, like improved shield block. That's, to my novice not being a WoW player in 2004,
it looks like it.
This looks like a hybrid offensive tank caster. Yeah. Cool. And I tanked up to level 30 or so. It worked. And then,
downhill from there.
And then warriors start getting plate armor, and it just stopped. But But no, okay, I completely understand being completely wedded to your main, but you got to play it. You definitely, I think everyone owes it to themselves to at least make a Demon Hunter and play it from like 98 to 100 just through the starting experience.
It's
even
cool.
even if you've
Yeah.
played it in alpha or you will soon play it in beta. One of the surprises that we have in store that no one's going to see in beta are awesome, epic in-game cinematics. And there are 3 of those that are part of the Demon Hunter experience that you're not going to see until the live game. So if you think you've seen it all, there's some very cool, important stuff.
Those are great in Warlords, so yeah, shout out to
I think
that
our,
team.
our cinematics team just keeps upping their game. There are some
Taryn
amazing
Gregory,
ones.
wherever you're at, buddy. Hi.
Yep.
So yeah, I'm excited for that. I think it definitely is about time we had Demon Hunters. I remember, I'm sure many people do, way back in beta for original vanilla, Demon Hunters were mentioned. People were all about like, oh man, what about Demon Hunters? And it never happened until now. I'm excited. I'm in.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's something that's come up in the past, and it's one of those just iconic, unique to Warcraft concepts. The blindfolded anti-hero that has taken on some of the power, some of the aspects of demons, so that he can better fight them. And we kicked around the idea. Every expansion, every time we're planning a new expansion, we talk about, well, do we want to do a new race? Do we want to do a new class? What should we do this time? And once the ideas for Legion just started coming together, it became obvious that like if we were ever going to do Demon Hunter, at any point in the entire arc of World of Warcraft as a property, this was the time to do it. And it's turned out honestly as well as we could have expected beginning the process. I think they have a very unique feel to them, super high mobility, super flashy, and a lot of fun to play.
Will there ever be a time in the future where other races will be Demon Hunters / Panda Demon Hunters? # Panda Demon Hunters. Make it happen. I want Pandarian Demon Hunters. Little cute, but
We'll see.
Murderers.
Anything's possible. I mean, I think
Thank you for placating me.
anything is possible.
Anything
But yeah, I mean, so
possible.
historically, we actually that was actually like a core question. Like, is it okay to only have one race available? And it was like, well, lore would dictate that only elves can be demon hunters because it wouldn't make sense for anything else to be. We kind of went back and forth on that for a while of like, should we go with the lore justification for this? And ultimately, I think we did, because I think where it came down initially was that for anyone who had a picture of a demon hunter in their mind, anyone who wanted to play demon hunter, the first thing your mind goes to is something like Illidan. That's the silhouette that you've seen. That's what demon hunter has been represented as. And so that's kind of the thing we wanted to deliver. Now, in the future, with demon hunters out in the wild, there's nothing that says that they couldn't instruct other races in those arts, in the through those rituals, in those skills. But that will be something that would happen going forward, potentially.
And the same thing for, I know there's a lot of people out there who want to see other race class combos. Is that something in the future that might be considered?
It's always something we consider. I mean, I think gnome and gnome hunters is a thing for the first time in Legion. Goblins haven't been able to be it, and we have this new family of mechanical pets that's going to be an awesome little perk for that archetype. There are some combinations that don't feel like they make a ton of sense. Think about a Tauren rogue, not super stealthy, kind of hard to imagine. Contrary to Dag, who at least the example set by Dag, the single best thing in Warlords of Draenor, the ogre subtlety rogue.
Yes, best. He's the best to have in your garrison.
He kind of redeems the entire garrison feature in our eyes, really. Looking for a place for him in the future.
He was one of the first I got, and shout out to Dag wherever he's at.
Yeah, but there are some, there are some that are going to be stretches, but it's something that we talk about that I think there's room for expansion in the future for sure.
Artifacts. I remember seeing these on a wall long ago, just the art, and being like, oh my god. So they've actually changed a bunch from what I saw way back when. And every time there's a new update, the artifacts look a little different. Things have changed. What's the process of creating those and developing them for, I guess, going back to this idea of this class order and giving you the RPG experience of like, I am playing a mage or I am playing a shaman, and how these artifacts have changed over time?
Yes, I mean, I think when we had the idea for artifacts, the concept was always a weapon of incredible power with rich history and lore behind it, is strongly associated with your class and a particular spec that you could level up and customize that would become this whole mechanism for alternate advancement and progression for your character. From an art perspective, we worked very closely with our art team and started with some of the sort of core fantasy ones. Like Ashbringer was the first artifact that we concepted and made because we had a really solid idea of what Ashbringer was. But one of the biggest challenges was we knew if we're giving everybody Ashbringer or Doomhammer, we don't want a world where all Ret Paladins have the exact same weapon and feel identical, like just cookie cutter copies of each other for the entire expansion. So from the outset, we had this idea of pretty radical visual customization, not just color variants of it, but what if you have a flaming Ashbringer? What if you have a shattered one that's held together just by crackling lightning? And so that was actually the first challenge that our artists ran down. Could we make these totally different concepts inspired by Ashbringer that felt distinct, but also still felt like the original weapon, just in terms of silhouette, in terms of the feel of it. And once they nailed that with Ashbringer, and if you go look at the different variants there, that gave us confidence that we could do it for just about everything else. And from that point on, it was really a mix of scouring the lore for weapons of great importance that had been mentioned and referenced, whether it was in books, whether it was in other resources associated with the Warcraft universe, and pulling those in where possible, and then coming up with some brand new ones that we had awesome stories to tell about.
Yep. And now they look even better. And before, the variations were like, all right, you can tell that it's still the same thing, but there's a little variation. Now they look drastically different, most of them, from like what it's like. Oh, well, now this little fire one, and this looks cool. And it's phenomenal. It looks so cool, and awesome. I'm really excited to see the difference of like, oh, I'm gonna see this other shaman, and he's gonna have a Doomhammer, but mine's gonna be better because
and there's a mix. There's some appearances are relatively easy to unlock, and it's more just about customizing your own personal preference in terms of color scheme, things like that. But then there are others that are going to reflect significant accomplishments, like extreme dedication to PvP, or killing a tough mythic raid boss, or whatever else. There's different avenues to each of them. Some of them are even secret appearances that are going to vary from weapon to weapon that you're going to have to figure out how to unlock. And part of it is, being able to show off, oh, wow, I have the, red fire version of this that is extremely rare and hard to get. And you're not going to see a lot of those out there. And you're different from the other people because you managed to accomplish that thing.
Cool. Speaking of Mythic, let's talk Mythic Plus.
Yeah.
What is going on there?
So ultimately, this is tied with Suramar as the feature that I'm most excited about in this expansion. I think we've done dungeon gameplay a disservice, I think, over the years. There's been a lot of fun to be had in the first month or two maybe of an expansion, when dungeons are relevant and everyone is running dungeons with their friends. You can log on and make a group in your guild easily. You're running a few dungeons a night, getting loot, going through different experiences. And then raids open, and almost no matter what level of raiding you're doing, even if it's just Raid Finder, that dungeon loot has quickly become obsolete. And that's been the story really throughout the past many years of World of Warcraft.
Yeah.
And so, Mythic Dungeons that we introduced in 6.2 as a way of kind of updating them to keep them relevant alongside current content were something that, we saw as a little bit of a trial balloon and the groundwork for a system that we're introducing in Legion to keep them relevant throughout the expansion. And this is ultimately, we have Mythic Dungeons from the outset, but if you beat the Mythic Dungeon, you can get a Mythic Keystone that lets you run the Mythic Dungeon at a higher level. So you have Mythic level 2, Mythic level 5, Mythic level 10, with the difficulty and rewards scaling up as you go.
Oh, so this is like Diablo style. Like your Rift Stone and your...
There's definitely some parallels and some inspiration from, Greater Rifts. We were all playing a ton of Reaper of Souls around the time, we were designing the system. But there are a few key differences. I think first and foremost, we knew that if we're asking players to run dungeons for longer period of time over the course of the entire expansion, we need to do more to vary up the experience. And so, whereas I think in Diablo, Greater Rifts are just health and damage increase across the board as you go up. Mythic Dungeons in Legion introduce affix modifiers that appear at different level thresholds that are going to change up your experience in the dungeon from week to week. So the way this works, we currently have 8 affixes. We're actually looking at going up to a total of 10 and you'll have up to 3 on a single keystone at a given time. And those affixes do things like massively reducing your tank's threat generation. So you have to literally, like, if you miss the days of wait for 3 Sunders, even though I know 3 Sunders isn't a thing anymore, you know what I mean. We're back in those days. Remember needing a main assist and having to follow the main assist because if you just hit something that your tank wasn't focusing on, you were going to pull aggro? Well, if you have the skittish affix active in your dungeon, that's the world you're going to be living in. Or if the bolstering affix is active, every time you kill a non-boss enemy, it sort of explodes to buff all nearby enemies. So you want to whittle down trash packs to low health kind of evenly and simultaneously kill them. Otherwise, you're going to get overwhelmed by them. And that's just a couple of examples. There's a whole bunch more. And the way it works is the affixes are fixed for the entire region worldwide, or actually for the entire world for a given week. So there isn't sort of heavy RNG in the sense of, oh, I got an easy keystone, you got a hard keystone. It's, okay, this week it's teaming and skittish as the 2 affixes. Teaming means there's extra trash mobs in all the packs in the dungeon, and skittish means you're gonna have an extra hard time holding aggro on your tank, and that's the combo to deal with.
So AOE, you should just AOE like crazy.
Yeah. Just hit barrage, it'll be fine.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I mean, and those affixes they'll unfold at different levels of the dungeon experience. So if you're just going in with a level 2 keystone, you just have bonus health and damage, nothing special. At level 4, you're going to see the first affix, so you would see teaming. Level 7 and higher, you're going to see skittish pop up as well. And so, as you're going through it, that's going to change how you approach the dungeon from week to week. Also, in many ways, these affixes serve as a tuning knob to let us vary sort of which group compositions are best or worst, so there isn't one single tank or one single healer that's consistently best for this experience or for this system across the board. So really, we view it as a way of keeping dungeons relevant and rewarding for the entire expansion, keeping the experience varied and dynamic, and also really ultimately setting up dungeons as an alternative progression path to raiding, or just a complement to raiding if it's something that you want to do with your friends on non-raid nights to progress your character. And I think that's something that increasingly, once you get into raiding nowadays in Warlords, there isn't a whole lot of. If you're raiding Hellfire, okay, you're getting your good loot from Hellfire. But on non-raid nights, what is the thing you're supposed to do to make your character better?
Get those claws. Go grind those claws, guys. You get just...
Or you could run some mythic dungeons.
Yes, yeah. So, I think this is... Well, first, before I move on, because I have so many questions right now, but before we move on... When you're talking about you said like you can set it to 7 and now you have 2. How high does that go?
Okay, so
can you just go crazy and be like, we want all of them?
Okay, so the way it works, it goes more or less. There is no limit. I mean, there is a limit in code, but no player is going to reach it. If you reach it, you're probably exploiting because it's like 10,000% health and damage. Everything
Challenge
one shot
accepted.
We'll probably ban you if you meet that challenge.
Don't do it, guys.
Don't meet the challenge. But yeah, it does work pretty similar to Diablo Rift Keystones in that sense. It's the way you level up your keystone is by clearing the dungeon in under a time limit. That time limit is much looser than, let's say, what challenge modes were previously because it's not supposed to be about a hectic speedrun. It's more just a way of measuring whether you are, just to make sure you're not kind of brute forcing and wiping consistently through the dungeon. If you can handle the difficulty comfortably, you can clear the bosses, you can clear the dungeon at that level, we'll move you up to the next one. And that means better rewards, potentially more challenge. At the beginning, and so that's how it goes over the course of a week. Then for the highest level dungeon that you cleared in the past week, each new week, you'll have a big reward chest waiting for you in your order hall with awesome loot that's based on the highest tier you cleared last week. And that will also give you a new keystone that we're currently thinking is going to be around like 2/3 or 70% of the level of your previous best. So again, we can start you off at a level that's kind of relevant and rewarding, but that we feel confident you should be able to do. We don't want to, okay, you did a level 10 last week. Well, back to 1 this week. Time to grind your way back up. That's, again, one of the things that, we learned from watching how some of these systems played out in Diablo that they experimented with and went through different solutions.
It's also very Hearthstone-y. Like, you did all this work, and, all right, you go back a few levels, but we're not going to punish you by sending you back to 25.
Exactly.
Great. All right, so then now the question that I really have, which is, you're going through these dungeons, mostly for loot, to get stuff to wear, and you have this awesome weapon now, so what is going on with transmogging? Because you have all these other things that you're looking for, but at the same time, you still are like, I have this cool weapon that I've had since like moment one roughly. So what happens there?
Well, so I mean, so we obviously have the new transmog system, and so across the board, you'll be collecting and permanently learning new appearances as you get new equipable items, and so you'll have much more ease of being able to customize your character's look without having to juggle full bags and void storage and banks of gear. But then when it comes to your artifact, I think there's two elements to it. Visually, as I mentioned earlier, you'll be sorting through dozens of potential appearances that you're able to unlock over the course of the expansion. Some of those will be unlocked through doing mythic dungeons, and that's kind of your personal expression on the weapon front. You can, if you really want, though I think you'd be a little crazy to do so.
Pitchfork?
You can transmog your artifact to look like something else, right?
Pitchfork.
Yes. So
Angry
yes.
farmer, just
Yes.
saving the day.
If you're a survival hunter and you just don't like the eagle spear and you think the trusty pitchfork is the way to go, well, can't stop you. I think you're crazy, but I can't stop you.
You heard it here. You're a crazy person, but you cannot be stopped, and that's powerful.
Pretty much. I don't know what else to say.
All right, so it's just one of those things that you're allowed to do all this stuff and transmog whatever you want. You're bonkers if you do, but whatever.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, great. I like that answer. And then I think really quickly we talked about the world quests. But can we dig a little deeper into world questing?
Sure. So I mean, so for us, I think this is sort of an evolution of a system. That we in Mists of Pandaria, obviously, we had lots and lots of daily quests, and there were a lot of positive elements to them. Certainly, in terms of getting people out into the world, giving the sense that there was a lot of world content to do. I think the two big negatives were partly the reward structure and how valor gear and other essential things were gated behind reputation, but also the limitations of the daily quest structure itself. It meant that by definition, if you missed a single day's worth of dailies, well, you were a day behind everybody else on getting to those unlocks, getting to those thresholds. And there was also a lot of repetition in, if you think back to Golden Lotus and the quest you were doing in Vale of Eternal Blossoms, if you did those diligently and you maxed out your Golden Lotus rep in Mists of Pandaria, you probably rescued Lao Softfoot from his stupid cage, right next to the shrines, more times than you care to count.
How does he keep getting captured?
He's not the brightest.
Just let him go. You know what? Sometimes you got to know when to cut a man loose.
Pretty much.
Let him go.
Yeah. He's just institutionalized. I don't know what to say. But yeah, so it was not ideal. Just because and we wanted to vary up the experience rather than asking to do the same thing over and over again. And so I think world quests on a couple different levels, I think, improve upon that structure because there is far more variety. We have made hundreds of world quests total. We have a scheduler behind the scenes that's pulling from a variety of different buckets to kind of give you an even spread of activities across the world, of activity types, of reward types, of locations. So you shouldn't be seeing the same ones over and over again. I mean, obviously there can be some repeats, but it's not the same daily routine. And then the emissary system that I mentioned earlier that lets you kind of stack up to 3 of them at a time. And there are some cases where there can be efficiencies where you can double dip on some emissary quests simultaneously, but also pulls you away from that sense of, well, I missed a day, so I'm falling behind. And finally, I think with our reward structures, I mean, there are going to be rewards for getting to reputation thresholds. There are items you can buy off of Vendor or Revered. There isn't this sort of complex valor interaction where you're earning a core currency that you're unable to spend, which is one of the mistakes we made in Mists. So overall, there's a ton of content. Get out into the world, do what you want to do, and you'll have a different experience on a day-to-day basis, and hopefully not, without a feeling of pressure that, if you don't log in on a given night. I mean, I experienced that myself in Mists. There were definitely days where you've had a long day at work or you were out with friends in the evening, you come home and you're like, I just want to go to sleep right now. But then in the back of your mind, you're like, but my dailies. If I don't do my dailies, I'm going to be falling behind. And the moment the game starts to feel like a chore, that's not a good place for it to be. And that's something we're very mindful of.
So, devil's advocate really quick.
Okay.
The questing being very random, or not random, but I guess it's something new every time. It's not you're going doing the same things over and over again. A lot of people I know like the idea that they knew exactly where to go and exactly what to do right away. And so every day they went back and redid it. And to me that seemed like a chore, and I was like, ugh. But many people I know were like, I can get it done very, very quickly and get my rep, and then get out and go do other things.
I don't think. I mean, for starters, you can see what the objective for the world quest is going to be just by mousing over it on your map. You can add quests to your quest tracker just by clicking on them on the map, so you can get some sense of what it's asking you to do. Of, oh, this is a profession quest, that's a pet battle quest. I don't want to do pet battle quests because I don't have a strong pet battle team. I don't care about that. Fine. Over time, you will probably develop that same sense of mastery and knowledge of like, oh, I remember that one. That one was super quick and easy to bang out. I'm going to go do that right away. That one took longer. I'll hold off on that one unless the reward's really good today, in which case I might do it anyway. But so I mean, it's about striking a balance. I think overall, I probably tend to agree with you more, where I prefer some sense of variety rather than doing the same thing over and over again. But in the long run, you'll probably come to recognize certain quests or quest types that are familiar and sort of reliable mainstays for you. The other thing, so something else that we built upon. To the extent that we had, our outdoor areas in Warlords, one of the things that, our original plan was, okay, we're going to make these areas where you can go adventure in, and we're not going to give you the same repetitive direction of, free louse offfoot every time. We're going to give you 6 or 7 different ways of contributing towards completing your objective here, and you can choose which one you want to do. There are some upsides to that, but one of the clear downsides was the lack of context. Which was a quest often provided, a sense of purpose of like, you're going to this place for this reason to do this thing, versus just, we'll go here, there's a blue bar, do stuff and fill it. One of the things the players will notice in Legion is that all of our world quests in the outdoor world have some kind of story wrapper to them, where as soon as you enter the area that's associated with a specific faction or specific purpose, you will have some lore delivered to you actually with, a pop-up with actual voiceover explaining what you need to do, why it's important, and kind of wrapping that up once you're done there. So context is very important as well. It's not, we can't just rely on the raw mechanics of, okay, kill 6 of these things and loot 7 of those things. Yeah. Story is essential, and that's something that we lost sight of for a bit in Warlords.
Look, no comment. I definitely didn't say that repeatedly many times, but it's nice. It's nice to hear it clarified, because as a big lore nerd, I'm hugely into like the story of Warcraft, and when I don't see it, I'm like, oh, I'm not happy with this.
Yeah. So no, I think one of our design pillars at Blizzard is gameplay first, but gameplay first doesn't mean gameplay only. Story matters, context matters. All of those things are essential to a good experience,
especially in an RPG.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, I feel like the only thing left to say is, again, beta is coming. So all the things we talked about, you can experience it. So I'll let you just give the deets one more time, and then we'll wrap this thing up.
Yeah. So unless anything horrible has happened with our servers in the last, 45 minutes or so since I first said it, which is possible. I'll have to check my email after this. But our current target is Thursday, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern, 11 p.m. Central European Time. To open the gates to our beta. We're going to be sending out a ton of invites over the next day or two. Please keep an eye on your email, and can't wait to see you in Broken Isles. Can't wait to see you in Legion, and hopefully we'll be talking to you a lot more in the near future.
All right, that's it. Thank you so much for watching. This was great. I learned a lot, and I guess that's where we'll end it.
It's a pleasure. Thank you all.
Yeah, thanks everybody.